My name's Jake Moody, and I'm a solutions architect with Software AG on their IoT and analytics team. Today, we're going to have a brief session where we'll cover the features and functions of the device management inside of Cumulocity IoT when used in conjunction with the ThinEdge framework. ThinEdge is an open source agnostic framework for connecting resource constrained devices. It works across a variety of gateways, PLCs, devices that run Linux operating system. Software AG has worked with a number of partners inside of a consortium to really drive development of the ThinEdge framework. And because of this, there are numerous accelerators as well as plugins that will get your devices connected to the Cumulocity platform quickly and easily. In order to highlight these features and functions, we're going to go through a series of demonstrations utilizing the device management application inside of Cumulocity IoT. If we expand out the devices navigation on the left-hand side of the homepage, you'll see that there's a registration option. You can register devices manually, both individually as well as in bulk. However, when you're utilizing ThinEdge, we take advantage of the cert-based authentication utilizing X509 certificates. Inside of our trusted certificate listing, you'll see in this case, we've already uploaded a self-signed cert for testing purposes. As you move into production, we can certainly take advantage of a signed certificate by your certificate authority. Regardless of the approach, once that certificate is trusted by Cumulocity, we can enable auto registration, which provides you with a zero-touch process for onboarding your devices and getting them connected to the platform. I've already done this for our ThinEdge client, so I'm going to jump into the All Devices page, and from there, I can see my ThinEdge client listed at the top of this grouping. I'm going to go ahead and drill into the information page for this device, and right away, I can see visual representation of the status of the device, that it's online, and my bidirectional communication is functioning. We can also see additional characteristics of this device, including agent version information, when it last communicated, and other elements that might be important for monitoring your device. The remainder of the device management interface is dynamic depending on the supported operations from your device that you're working with. In this case, we've enabled all of the features and functions of the ThinEdge and Cumulocity IoT platform for this session. We're going to start by looking at the key elements of our domain model, starting with measurements, which provide us with time-based numerical tracking of key metrics that might be important. In our case, we're working with a virtual machine, and so we have computer statistics like CPU usage, disk space, memory, but this could very easily be temperatures, pressures, flow rates, or things along those lines. The next element in our domain model that has a corresponding tab are our alarms. Alarms are text-based notifications that have a criticality associated with them, as well as a basic flow. So your users can log in, they can clear alarms, they can confirm alarms. There's a basic workflow that's tied into these alarms. Similar to alarms, we have our events, which are the final element of our domain model. These provide us with a text-based notification that also has a date time stamp associated with it. Very similar to alarms. However, there is no criticality and there is no workflow associated with these. If you want to use either events or alarms or a measurement threshold to drive downstream processes, you can certainly do that by utilizing the streaming analytics capabilities of the Cumulocity platform. The remainder of the interface that we see displayed is all driven by supported operations, so capabilities of the device. So we've configured our configuration plugin, and for that reason, we see a configuration tab where we've registered a number of configuration files that we want to manage. The one that I'm going to look at is this ThinEdge file parser watchdog. This is a custom plugin that was developed to parse out XML files as they hit a directory. There is a configuration file associated with that plugin, and I wanted to be able to monitor as well as update that file without actually having physical access to the device. So here we can see the current settings from the device configuration file. We can also store an acceptable configuration file inside of a repository for our configuration files. We can then utilize the bidirectional capabilities of the platform to push these configuration files to the edge, thereby eliminating the requirement to have access to the device. Similar in nature to our configuration, we also have firmware management capabilities. You'll notice there's also a firmware repository in the left-hand navigator, and you can install firmware associated with the device in a very similar way to what we saw with our configuration. We have a bidirectional integration. Once you've uploaded your firmware binaries and associated it with a given device type, you can then push those binaries down to the device and install them. In this particular example, I don't have a firmware running on this virtual machine, but I did want to show you the placeholder for the firmware capabilities. The last element, what I'll call content management, is software. If we go to our software page, we are running a Debian VM. Debian is supporting the apt package manager, and for this reason, we can take advantage of the out-of-the-box support for apt packages. So here we can see a list of all of the software that's been installed on this device. We can filter this list. We can do it. We can filter by software type or by program name. And we can also from here install software that we may have registered within our software repository. So if I wanted to show you a quick example of what this might look like, we have a simple roll dice application, which generates a random number 1 through 6 that is currently not installed on this device. From the drop-down list, I have a couple of different versions that I could push. I'm going to go ahead and just select the latest. And when I click on install and apply these changes, it's going to create an operation. And after that installation has been completed, I'll receive notification in the upper left-hand corner there with the green checkbox indicating that's been completed. We'll come back to the roll dice example in just a couple of minutes. The remainder of the interface that we're going to be looking at is really what I would consider more monitoring. So if we look at the control tab, we can see a listing of all of the operations that have been triggered against the device, as well as their current status. We can also filter these by status as well. So we have one-click access, a central place where we can see all the activity on the device. We might also want to have services that we have running on the device that we need to monitor to ensure that they're up. In the case of ThinEdge, we have the core agent, and we also have a number of Cumulocity specific plugins that we have running to enable some of this functionality. So we've already looked at firmware, we've already looked at configuration. Those are enabled via plugins specifically for Cumulocity. And we can see the status of those all again in the central pane of glass. If we look at availability, we can see what the availability of the device has been over the last day, week, and month. And we can see that very easily in a pie chart indicating percent time that it's been up. Another element that we have are our log files. So we can register the various logs that we might want to retrieve from the device. And once we've done that, we have one-click access to retrieve those logs. So again, coming back to my file parser example from earlier, I have a log file associated with this plugin, and if I want to retrieve that log file, I can simply select it from the type, click the request button, and again, it will create an operation to the device requesting that file. And once that's done, I'll be able to expand that out, and then I can actually see the contents of that log file displayed here associated with that operation. The last tab that I wanted to show you is the remote access page. We can create a number of different remote access endpoints from VNC to Telnet to SSH. In this case, I've already created an SSH. I've provided my username and password. And to establish that connection, I simply have to click on the connect button, and that will create an SSH session to the device for me, at which point we can show you that roll dice that we installed earlier. So we now have our SSH session. If we trigger the roll dice application, we should now be able to see those random numbers get generated via the roll dice app that was installed earlier during our demonstration. So hopefully you can see the value that device management capabilities provide with an IoT platform. With Cumulocity, these are all provided out of the box. You don't have to worry about managing and building these types of functionality. It's all provided with the platform. And we can take advantage of that via our thin edge framework integration. Look forward to speaking with you in the near future, and keep an eye out for additional videos where we'll dive into more details on some of these capabilities. Thank you very much. Bye.